the championship team. We got Steve Basford joining us today. Steve, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, guys. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. We really appreciate you joining us today. Obviously, we want to talk a little bit today about the Buckeyes, and we want to talk about that 2002 team. Obviously, the book, The Improbable National Championship. That was my favorite team. There it is, right there. Yes, sir. My favorite team of all time. I just graduated from Ohio Wesleyan in 2001 and moved down into Columbus, Ohio to start being a working man, and got to see this team up close, sitting on the 50-yard line for every game. So this is by far my favorite team of all time. And I rewatched the Ohio State-Wisconsin game from 2002 last night. And I guess the one thing that kind of stood out for me was the coaching. Jim Tressel to me is one of the best coaches I've ever seen in winning football games. And then the depth that this team had. I'm watching in the second half. Robert Reynolds got banged up a little bit. Wilhelm was hurt the week before, or was banged up a little bit. But, you had A.J. Hawk and Bobby Carpenter as your, backup freshmen coming in the game. What did you like, I guess, about this team the most? And what really stuck out to you as this season was going on in 2002?
First, I want to say it's really hard to follow Gary and Conley from last week, but I'll do my best. So thanks for having me on.
Yes, of course.
My favorite season also by far, 2002. What can you say about a 14-0 season? 7-5 the year before. The seniors were 21-15 coming into that season. So think about this year. The Buckeyes lose one game. It's the end of the world.
Yep.
In their previous 3 years, they lost 15 games. They lost 7 of their last 14. So the last 14 games is a toss-up. They're going to win, they're going to lose. But you talk about the depth. In the book, I talk about what I call the Magnificent Seven, the 7 games that they won by 7 points or less.
Yep.
And in those games, it was something like 6 different guys had the winning touchdown, and like 5 different guys had the most yards rushing. So a great balance. You had a freshman running back, Maurice Claret. When he was healthy, he was dynamite. So there's one of your parallels to this year when Travion Henderson is healthy.
Yeah.
Team is a completely different team.
No doubt.
You had Craig Krenzel in his first full year. This year you got Kyle McCord in his first full year. The 2002 season, they won 4 games in which they scored less than 20 points.
Yep.
And the Buckeyes own the record of consecutive games scoring at least 20 since then, which we all know was interrupted by the Notre Dame game this year when they scored only 17. So there's another feature of the 20-point cutoff.
Going back into that season, you were talking about the 7 games that were within 7 points. I mean, everybody kind of looks back to the Purdue game at the theatrics on Jenkins' touchdown, that 4th down. But don't you think in a lot of ways that maybe that Cincinnati game or the Illinois game, especially the Cincinnati game, when you're beating a team, granted, you're playing in Paul Brown, but you're beating a team that you really should be beaten by more, and Claret's hurt. Don't you think that would have been probably one of the games that probably gets overlooked in many ways on that magical season?
Absolutely, because it was the first one. Like before that, can you think of any Buckeye game that they pulled out late? Well, back in 2000, they kicked a field goal against Illinois at the gun to win that game. But you're right. The Buckeyes were trailing, and then Craig Krenzel with a spinning touchdown run to get the go-ahead points. It was his only touchdown run in the regular season. He had 2 against Miami. And then Cincinnati has plenty of time. They got 3 minutes. They go down to the 15-yard line. They've got 4 cracks at the end zone. The first one was broken up by E.J. Underwood, who was filling in. There's your depth again.
Yep.
E.J. Underwood, a freshman, playing near his hometown of Hamilton. He was filling in, and he gets the breakup. And the next 2 passes, the receiver clearly dropped it. Had it in his hands, dropped it. So you've heard about the luck eyes. There was a case of luck. And the final pass, Will Allen intercepts. It was tipped by Matt Wilhelm. And then go to the Illinois game. Buckeyes were the last team never to have played an overtime game. So that game goes in overtime because Illinois kicks a field goal on the last play of the game. And by the way, Miami kicks a field goal on the last play of regulation. So there's your 2 overtime games. Illinois game, as you said, no Claret, but who comes through? Maurice Hall with the winning touchdown, not just then, but the following week against Michigan.
Yeah, and you have to win a championship, you have to have things, the ball has to bounce your way. I mean, there's going to be times throughout the season where things just have to fall, have to bounce your way, have to fall on your side of the spectrum for you to win certain games. But, I really think that this team, had the leaders that it took to win a national championship. I mean, we already talked about Wilhelm, one guy we have not talked about yet, who I think is one of the best leaders that's ever played at Ohio State, and that's Mike Doss, number 2, the safety who was a 3-time All-American out of Canton McKinley and really was a great player, but also, everybody in the locker room listened to this guy. And I just want to get your perspective on, the leaders that were on this team and what you think that did to help them continue to win these close games.
Mike Doss announces in January of 2002 he's coming back for his senior season, coming back to finish his education and to win a national championship. Now, who says that coming off a 7-5 team? So obviously he had the background. He knew what he was going to do. As you said, the state championships at Canton McKinley. Matt Wilhelm, who battled injuries, had a dynamite season, made big plays against Purdue, and gets the tip pass against Cincinnati. And by the way, the field goal by Miami to put it into overtime, Wilhelm says that he got a thumb on it. So he came that close to blocking that field goal and not sending it to overtime. But you remember when Jim Tressel made his speech at the end after the Miami game was over, he thanked the seniors, 13 seniors. 13 was a magical number the whole season, just like 14 was a magical number during the season. But you're right, across the board, seniors. But actually, it was a young team because something like 90% of their offense was coming back in 2003 compared to entering 2002 season. They only had like 25% of their offense coming back.
Yeah. And just to follow up on that, another guy that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle, but as I mentioned, I was watching that Wisconsin game last night, and I remember several games this year where it happened where Chris Gamble, made big catches to keep the chains moving or to score points. And then, at times, we were talking about EJ Underwood, starting that Wisconsin game, he got burned a couple of times by Orr and some of the other receivers for Wisconsin and was benched at one point. And they put Gamble out there at corner again. So this is a guy that returned kicks. This is a guy that played wide receiver, and then a guy that also, played defense, for stretches during this year. And just talk to us a little bit about what you remember about him and, what he meant to this team in all 3 phases.
Here's what I remember. I was at the Cincinnati game, and in the 4th quarter, Cincinnati throws a pass into the end zone, and it's intercepted by number 7. I'm saying, who's number 7? Because that was the first time that Chris Gamble went in on defense.
Yep.
The year before, he showed some potential. He came on strong the last 2 games against Michigan and the bowl game against South Carolina. But then I called him the designated interceptor because he had 3 interceptions before he even made a defensive tackle that season. And he finished the season with 4 interceptions, and he had the interception return against Penn State, 40 yards for a touchdown, which, by the way, of his 7 career interceptions at Ohio State, that was the only one with any return yardage.
Crazy.
Now, we've had a lot of Jim Tressel guys, people that played for Jim Tressel in the past on our show. But you look at the way things were going down at the end of the John Cooper era and then the 7-5 year before. What did Jim Tressel do to help build this team from a culture standpoint? Do you see from, going back to 2000 through 2002 to help make this possible? We've heard a lot of people talk about him from a personal level, how he talks less about football, but from your perspective, what do you see?
I think it was just the never give up attitude, because even though they went 7-5 his first year, they never lost back-to-back games. So after every loss, they bounced back. If you look at his history at Youngstown State, he won 4 national championships, competed in 2 others. And so many of those games were a carbon copy of what you saw at Ohio State, coming down to the very end, kicking a field goal, making a big defensive play. So it just kind of instilled in him that you never give up. You play for the next play, and you love your teammates.
Yeah. Yeah, and he really had those guys believing in all that stuff. And I kind of see some parallels, between this year's team and that team, in the sense that it's not always pretty. I mean, I think Ryan Day has kind of adapted some of the Tressel philosophy this year, that we don't have to win by 25, 30 points. If you score one more point than the other team, you win. And I think this team reminds me of that a little bit in 2 regards. One, the defense is solid, and this defense can get the other teams off the field and hold the other team to not scoring 30 points or more. In fact, I don't think anyone has up to this point. And then also relying on the run game. Obviously Jim Tressel was infamous for always, relying on the run game. He started spreading it out a little bit when he had Troy Smith throwing the ball, but he did love his run game. And as you already mentioned, this year, Travion Henderson, when he plays, has been very, very important to this team's victories. Talk to me about what you think about, possibly some parallels existing between that championship team of 2002 and this year's team, as far as having a defense and being able to run the football.
The 2002 team gave up only 13 points per game, which was a 7-point improvement over the year before. So the year before, they lost 4 of their 5 games by 7 points or less. So they flipped that around in 2002 because giving up 1 less touchdown per game. This year, they're giving up 10.7, which I believe is like half of what they gave up last year. And most points they've given up this year is 17 points. But one thing I've noticed about this defense is the tackling is so sure.
Yeah.
I can remember so many plays this year. It's like 3rd and 5. They complete, the offense completes like a pass. It looks like they're going to get the first down. And the tackling is right there, right on the spot. Stop them short of a first down. The tackling this year has just been terrific.
Agree.
Now, like going into that Miami game, because, I mean, let's be honest, that was a game where everybody and their dog pretty much outside the state of Ohio was picking Miami to win and go back to back. I mean, they had a star-studded roster. I mean, you look back even more so now when you look at that Miami roster of what they did in the pros, from, Willis McGahee, Sean Taylor, such and such. Do you ever kind of like sit back there and think about how amazing a victory that was, and what about it that in Tempe that you found the most amazing from that game?
Was there, by the way. Started out as 13-point underdogs, dropped down to like 11 at the time. But the tempo was set right away because they get a sack of Ken Dorsey, the first possession. He had been sacked only, I think, 8 times in the regular season. The Buckeyes got to him 4 times, but the pressure was always there. And the Buckeyes said they could see it in the eyes of Miami. They could see that Buckeyes were doing something they did not expect. Again, they harassed Dorsey. They held Willis McGahee to his worst game of the year before he got injured in the 4th quarter. He was starting to pick it up when he got injured, but the defense was just solid. The Buckeyes could have scored more points. They had the fake field goal that didn't work.
Yeah.
They had the interception in the end zone that Sean Taylor took out and Maurice Clarett stole from him. They got 3 points out of that to make it 17-7. Mike Nugent missed a field goal shorter than the one that he made. So it was really total dominance. And actually, the Buckeyes on offense floundered. I think in regulation, they had 220 yards, their worst of the year. They finished with 267. Their last 4 games, they finished with under 300 yards on offense. So it's a defense that you're in game in and game out.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and that's why I'm loving this team this year, is because I'm not nervous if we go 3 and out, or if we end a drive with no points, because this defense and Jim Knowles has got them playing at a clip where I feel pretty good about them going out on the field. And going back to this team, I met Mo shortly after his sophomore year. I'd never really met him, but I knew of him before that. But I met him after that, and I just always liked the kid. And obviously that first year was tremendous. But I think back of what could have been, and I want to get your take on it. Where do you think this kid would have stood had he played another season or so for the Buckeyes, and all that occurred? We won't get into everything that happened, but all the things that went down that kept him off the field, including his own efforts to get to the NFL. What do you think that his career would have looked like, barring injury?
Yeah, he could have played 2 more years and set freshman record as a freshman, most yards by a freshman. Single game record until it was broken later by Trey Sermon. But yeah, the ceiling was infinite, because again, you had the entire offensive line coming back for the next year. You had the quarterback coming back. You had 90% of the offense coming back. So everything was set up for the Buckeyes in 2003. Krenzel missed a couple games injured in 2003, but I think the Buckeyes still won those games. But yeah, potential of Maurice Clarett, I think you just saw it scratch the surface, because he missed all those games in his first year. So a healthy Maurice Clarett, you saw what he did against Michigan. And even though he got bottled up against Miami, he had the 2 touchdowns, 5 yards and 7 yards, including the 5-yard winning touchdown.
He was legit.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask that. You had to talk about the pass interference in the book, and it still amazes me to this day how people still, on both sides of the fence, talk about that issue itself. What are your thoughts? I mean, because obviously you had to talk about it in the book. What are your thoughts on that whole issue?
So I have watched the full game replay at least 20 times. I've watched that play 100 times. And to be honest, I don't see it, except, okay, hang on. As Keith Jackson pointed out, Glenn Sharp had his left arm around the waist, but the official says, and you can find photos of this, you can see a frame by frame leading up to that. There's a lot of chucking going on in that 10-yard window. And that's really what the official Terry Porter said, was there was all this contact going on before the ball came to Gamble. And by the way, if Chris had caught it, it would have been his only touchdown reception of his career.
Wow. I didn't even know that. Holy crap.
all these amazing catches. He never scored a touchdown. But Steve, I just want to get your thoughts on our current. I mean, we talk about Jim Tressel. He's one of my favorite people, not to mention my favorite coaches. But this guy right now is doing a pretty damn good job. I mean, it's just astonishing to me. I mean, I was trying to think. You're the statistician. You know more stats than anybody that I've ever met. Who has started their career with a better record than Ryan Day? Because I can't find it.
Might have been Newt Rockne, or
okay.
Who was it? Was it Walter Camp? You remember Walter Camp, right? From the 90s? From the 90s? Not the 1990s, the 1890s.
Yeah. No, I don't.
But I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, is there anybody that is, still alive that has had a better record than him starting their career?
Larry Coker didn't lose a game in his first 2 years until the Buckeyes knocked him off in the fifth one.
I mean, let's be honest. Butch Davis kind of, set the table for him on that one too, as well. I mean, but no, I agree with you.
Yeah, no, I just love this guy. I mean, it's a different world that we live in now. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, if the Buckeyes lose a game, I'm not one of those Buckeye fans, by the way. If we go 11-1, I'm not, burning couches. But there are some that are, and there's a lot. I mean, that to me is what sticks out the most with Coach Day, is the pressure that he's under. I mean, yesterday against Rutgers, they're running fumble rooskies. They're it's everything's on the table, because a lot of times when you're playing Ohio State and you are the opposition, it's your Super Bowl. I mean, if you can win this game, it's something that'll be remembered forever. And to never lose a game to an unranked opponent in his career, I just think is pretty amazing. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I'll go back to last week. It looked like Wisconsin was a trap game. Luke Fickell on the other sideline. It's a tight game until the very end. And again, yesterday, down 9-7 at halftime. You're not feeling too good. But you're giving up only field goals. And again, there's your defense. Go back to the Wisconsin game, where Wisconsin had first and goal at the 2, and Eichenberg makes the stop. Yep. And then 3 stops inside the 5, or a couple stops inside the 5 yesterday against Maryland.
Yep.
Excuse me, against Rutgers.
Rutgers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rutgers,
Yeah. We knew where you're going.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. So we'll see what happens. I don't know whether or not this, is a national championship team or not. They've got to get by the team up north, and maybe it'll be a little bit more fair this year, since hopefully they won't be sending folks to games and filming the sidelines to this point. But they got to get past the team up north, and then obviously Georgia is still looking good. Washington is undefeated, so there's a ways to go. But I like the way this thing is headed. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you what happened to my Bishops yesterday. It looked like Wittenberg got the best of them after, I believe, we beat them last year, correct?
Bishops won last year 14-7 in Springfield. And the Bishops yesterday, the last 2 weeks, the Bishops have set 3 records. Last week, their first ever 100-yard interception return for a touchdown.
2 95-yarders yesterday, right? Or 90-yard kickoff return and a 95-yard touchdown, right? 99-yard
kickoff by Ja'Kai Alston, the 95-yard catch and run by Tyler Webb. So they get the 2 explosive plays yesterday, but the third quarter was dominated by Wittenberg. And they took a tight game, and Tigers won that game 36-28. Bishops actually had the ball moving at the end of the game, but ran out of gas.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. I like what Coach Watts is doing, and obviously I love the defensive coordinator. I played for Coach Delaney. He was actually there when I was there. That tells you how long he's been coaching for the Bishops. Because I am not a spring chicken. But Steve, tell everybody where they can get the book that we've been talking about all show, and where they can find it.
So the book is Ohio State Football 2002, The Improbable National Championship. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. My second book is 2001 Games, covers my broadcasting and stats work. I'm actually up to 2,229 games now. And my first book is Buckeye Memories, which covers the 68 to the 2020 season. All my inside stories and being able to take trips in the 80s on to WSU. I was with them, got to go to road games and all the fun stuff. And there's also like 500 fun facts you can try to stump your friends with.
What's your favorite stadium outside of the shoe that you've ever been to?
That I've not been to?
No, that you have been to.
First of all, I'll say that Northwestern's a lot of fun. You wouldn't think that's up there. The Rose Bowl is a lot of fun. I'm not keen on Michigan. Sorry about that.
No, neither are we.
I would be shocked if you did say the Big House.
Well, it's just not a fun experience.
No.
So, yeah, that's a really good question. I have to go with the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. Rose Bowl's pretty cool.
What's wrong with Tempe and Sun Devil Stadium when you beat Miami? And
I always loved that place. I was telling James last week, me and my boss walked up. We were there for a conference, and we walked up. They were playing Washington in a night game. We walked up 5 minutes before the game started, bought 2 tickets for $5, sat in the mezzanine where we had free food and watched a game that went into overtime. And I was like, it's a pretty cool stadium, and the price was right. So, and not to mention the Buckeyes' success there. So I always loved that place. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Big House. It's not that loud, honestly. I mean, there's a ton of people in there, but the way that it's built down into the ground, it just the sound kind of gets lost. And Steve, I live here in Knoxville, Tennessee now, and I can tell you that even down the street here, it's a lot louder. The way that it's constructed, it kind of holds the sound a little bit better. But I love hearing about all the other stadiums and all the cool places you've been. So we'll check out the other books and let everybody know where to get them as well. And thank you so much for coming on with us today, Steve. We loved catching up with you and hearing about the Buckeyes and that 2002 team. So thank you so much for your time, buddy.
Thanks a lot. My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon, man. Have a great day. All right.